If you work in Google Ads and that is what you do for a living, I know exactly what happens because it happens to me. And that is you sit down and you think, just 30 more minutes, I'm just going to look at this account. And before you know it, the day is over and you've been sucked into your ads campaigns and you haven't gotten anything done personally that you said you were going to do. You haven't eaten, you haven't done your workout, you haven't put on laundry, you have the benefits of working at home, but you haven't done all those self-care things that are super important. And I get it. We work in an environment where that data, it just sucks us completely in. It is so easy to get into a rabbit hole of what's going on. And frankly, a lot of those rabbit holes and a lot of that like suck of the engine, that's what makes us good at our jobs. But the fact of the matter is that isn't sustainable. I have been there. I absolutely have been there. And I burned myself completely, utterly out. Today, we're going to talk about it. Welcome to the Sarah Steeman YouTube channel. This is the YouTube channel where I am going to start opening up the content to more and more behind the scenes freelance content. I have found that I absolutely love running my business, getting clients, and everything that goes into being a solopreneur. And I really want to share it with you so you can build your own dream life, because that is exactly what this is. I often say that I would rather pick out every toenail individually than go back to the agency world. And here we are. I'm spilling the tea. So here's the thing. Self-care, taking care of yourself, your house, your home, your meals, your family, those are non-negotiables. In fact, if you do those things, you will survive the long term in the age that we live in pay-per-click. I've shared this story before, and I don't know that it will ever get old because I never want someone to go through what I went through during my first few months as a freelancer. I was obsessed with getting clients and building up a revenue so I could prove to myself that I was worth something in this ads space. I knew in my heart of hearts that I was so good at Google Ads, but I had to make the money and prove it all over that I could do it on my own, get the clients, and be successful. I wanted the money to show for that desperately. And so I literally sat down at my computer for 12, 14 hours a day. I worked all weekends on content and building and putting stuff out there and trying to get clients. And honestly, it completely worked. I mean, it was phenomenal. I mean, my business absolutely catapulted. But once I had all those clients and I was making my goal revenue, my eyes started twitching. I was having physical, actual symptoms of stress and anxiety. And to a certain extent, I was probably processing everything that happened when I left my job, which I've said wasn't the best experience I've ever gone through. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But I also was processing the stress of just wanting to get that business and being pulled in 15 different directions and ultimately doing something that I knew wasn't sustainable. And the thing is, that isn't why I left to go out on my own. I left for flexibility. I left for freedom. And to a certain extent, I had it. Meaning it was there for the taking, but I wasn't allowing myself to have it, especially after the novelty wore off. Those first few months, I loved it. I would go to the library. I would have my kid home. I would go to the grocery store during the day. But at the end of the day, that wasn't getting clients. And so I had to put the pedal to the metal. But I put the pedal to the metal times 1,000. And when I look at where this comes from and where this came from, it was because I was in such an employee mindset when I approached my business. I felt like if I wasn't at my computer, I wasn't doing anything. And that could not be further from the truth. The fact is, if you are building a business like I am, where content is how you get your clients, you need to build the content and then walk away, because it's during that quiet time when the business comes in. And I think that that's what a lot of people miss in all this and why people get burned out. Because they don't realize that first day or two after you push out content, it's kind of just sitting there. Sometimes it initially takes off and it can do really well, but a lot of times it's just sitting there and it builds over time. In the agency world, we're really, really trained. Time in seat is billable hours. Success is measured by how many hours we do. And even if you're not billing hourly, you feel like you have to be in your seat to earn that retainer that you have. But as a solopreneur, more hours in the seat doesn't equal more success. I think that is a huge, huge myth. In fact, fatigue leads to worse results, especially when it comes to client acquisition. Because at the end of the day, if you're vibing that you're tired and off and busy, prospects are going to pick up on that. It's unattractive. If there's that desperate energy in your content, in your life, and how you work through problems, that will be picked up on by your clients. And a lot of times when it comes to clients, we get what we put out there. So if you're putting out content with that desperate pick me energy, a lot of times you end up with clients that sort of have that too. In fact, I remember one of the first potential clients that I had was a business owner that I met out in a conference. And the first meeting that we had, we sat down and immediately they started picking at me and said, because at the time my office was facing the other way. So it was facing or I'm sorry, my camera faced the entryway to my house, is really how it worked out. And this client was based in California, or potential client. I ended up never taking them. And so I was having a meeting with them, and I believe it was around like 4 o'clock, and my kids walked in the door. And I continued the meeting because we've all worked through 2020. I've worked at home for over 15 years. I've had my kids walk in. I didn't think it was a big deal. You just continue on. And then also the other thing is because my office camera faced the doors to the entryway of the house, because my office sits with an entryway. I don't feel like it was like the best professional background, not like what I have set up now, which I set up because I was doing a lot more podcasting. In any case, it just whatever. And so I got an email from this potential client before they were ever a client that was like, hey, a couple questions. One, can you make sure that the kids don't come in while we're in the meetings? And two, do you mind shifting your office around so that, it can look XYZ in the background? You're meeting with CEOs. And I remember thinking, no, absolutely not. That is the most ridiculous ask. But I knew that that was a ridiculous ask because I have worked and I have self-esteem and I know my worth. And at the end of the day, if you're not choosing me because I have kids or because I don't come across professionally, I know that that's wrong, since I've worked with major, major large clients and I've had kids in and out. It's not like that disrupts me. That is the beauty of freelancing. But again, that comes from knowing your worth. And if you're desperate for that business, a lot of times you can be in the situation where you would sort of take that feedback and be like, yes, and adjust. That would have required me moving around my whole entire office. Again, getting some sort of childcare for my kids, which they're way too old for babysitters. I mean, they're coming in and out of the door of their own home. It would have required so much more adjustment for an hourly rate that isn't worth that. So again, if you are in that space of desperation, you're going to end up taking on clients like that are obviously clearly problematic. So don't get yourself there. That is going to be important. So really what shifted for me was what I call the trust economy. So I do have an employee that's working for me 24/7. And do you know what that employee is? My content. My systems are working. So I do not have to be at my desk sitting booty in chair 24/7. During quiet times, the goal is for me to be fueling my tank. So like right now, I'm putting out this video. Once I put out this video, I'm going to walk away. I'm going to change into my workout clothes, out of my pajamas. And what I'm going to do is I am going to go and I'm going to do my workout. And then I'm spending the rest of the day today doing my laundry, because my employee, AKA my content, is working for me. And doing laundry, tidying the house, making sure my meals are taken care of, that clears away my mental clutter. So when I do work with my clients, I'm coming at them from a very, very fresh, filled perspective. So really, self-care isn't a reward for a good week. It is a business strategy. That's how you need to look at it. So really, when it comes to this being part of your business strategy, like anything else, you can bucket it just like we optimize accounts. So like, for example, bucket it into physical health. If you are physically strong, you're going to be able to sustain mentally a lot more. Your brain is going to work better. You're going to be able to come up with unique solutions. You're going to be able to analyze accounts better. You're going to be able to look at your own data and your own business better. You're overall coming to the table from a stronger standpoint. You'll withstand illness. You're not get as many colds. You're just going to be physically stronger. And that is so important to a sustainable business. And I cannot forget the mental part. That is a second bucket that is extremely important. And again, when it comes to focus, clarity, communication, being clear and concise, if you are not fueling yourself mentally, you're not going to be able to come across in that way. You're going to sound confusing, chaotic. You're not just going to be all there. And that is something that clients and prospects will pick up on. So reading, cooking, taking care of yourself, that is so very important to everything that you do. It's not just data, it makes you a more interesting human being. And that's what clients are attracted to. It's not just your paid search skills. I think that that's the thing a lot of people miss. If you look at my LinkedIn content, I write a lot about Google Ads. That is what I write. But sometimes I just write personal things too and connect with people. And no one wants to connect with someone that's stressed out and frazzled all day. And the third category I have is just family and friendships. I think it's so important to maintain those. I wouldn't have the content that I'd had or that I have currently if I didn't talk to people, if I didn't spend time in the outside world connecting with people. Because if you don't connect with people, how do you know what their problems are? And how do you write content that connects? Because you can't connect on a personal level. You're not making time. Well, if you're spending all this time alone, your content can really come across as being very, very self-centered and just lacking that personal touch. So it's important to connect and get out there and socialize and be with family and friends. That is part of your business strategy and essentially optimizing that employee if it's working for you 24/7. So really the payoff here with taking care of yourself is that you can have a business and be taking care of yourself. You can have freedom and make a ton of money. And it's something that we're just not taught as employees and that I have learned by doing this, by being successful for over 2 years. So my challenge to you is to pick one area of your life in the 3 buckets that I outlined, be it mental, physical, or family and friendships, and really make an effort this week to go ahead and put time and effort into this. Like I said, after I finish and upload this, I am heading to do laundry, to clean up, and to get ready for our cleaners all day today. And I am really excited because Friday, a new grocery store opens up near me, and I'll be taking the time to make a new recipe. And I will go to the grocery store in the middle of the day and make sure I have that prepped and ready for our Friday night dinner. And I will celebrate my daughter's birthday. I take that time and I know how important it is. Your business needs your self-care. Don't chase business with that desperate energy. Attract clients with your well-rested, confident energy and start trusting your new employee the content today. Happy freelancing.